Anyway, welcome. So we're coming towards the very end of the Brahmajala Sutta. This is the 8th part of this particular sutta, and so we're going to have a look at the very last of these 62 views that the Buddha is talking about. So just to remind you again, the Brahmajala is, Brahma is obviously the kind of the high deity of the ancient Brahmanical religion, and Jala means a net. So it's like the idea here is like the supreme, the highest God is also like the supreme. So it's like the supreme net in which you catch all of these kind of views. So this is the net of views. Just to remind you very briefly, the main idea behind this is that when there is a sense of self, which obviously is the problem that we are looking to undo in the Buddhist teachings, as long as there is a sense of self, there is a lot of consequences from that. And one of the main consequences is that you have all these views about, especially about yourself and about who you are, and those views then also go beyond yourself. They actually become views that encompass really all of reality, all of experience, all of existence. And so you get these views about the world and yourself. And there's 62 views here, but they really tend to come down to two kinds of views. And one is actually there's a few more as well, but the two main views is what we call in Buddhism eternalism and annihilationism. The idea that things go on forever or they stop. And there are variations on that theme, the views in this particular sutta. And what is so interesting about this is, firstly, that these kind of views that are found in the suttas, these are pretty much the same views that people have today. Yeah, this is what makes the sutta so interesting. Nothing has really changed in 2,500 years. Still the same, right? Human beings are the same. Our psychology is the same. Our delusions are the same. Our defilements are the same. And because of that, the views that we have about the world are also basically the same. You think about modern day philosophy and religion, basically it is all about either eternalism or it is about everything coming to an end when we die. Yeah, so nothing has really changed. And so this is why these things are very relevant to the present day. And they're also very relevant because, as I mentioned before, in Buddhism, people also have these views. You might think that in Buddhism we wouldn't have these views because we have the Buddha, our teacher, to tell us what is right view, what is wrong view. But despite that, despite the fact that we have the Buddha there, people still get it completely wrong sometimes. Why is that? Well, the reason is that the drivers, the craving, the underlying tendencies are so powerful and so strong that it distorts the teaching of the Buddha to conform with your defilements. It's a very important point. I think we very often underestimate the power of defilements. The power of defilements are there, so they will make you see what you want to see in things. And even when you have a teacher like the Buddha, who actually, who then sees, even if you have someone who sees through that delusion like the Buddha, still you misinterpret it because the power of defilements are so strong, it distorts those teachings. So for this reason, actually it's very useful, I think, to have some idea of these particular views. So now we have come to the last 5 of these views, and these are called extinguishment in the present life. So this is, and this is the idea that you attain nibbana in the present life, and these are then really eternalist views because you attain nibbana in this life, and this kind of nibbana then carries on after you die. That's kind of the idea. So extinguishment in the present life, ditta dhamma nibbana, is the Pali for that. So let's have a look at this. I intend to finish the sutta today. So if it takes 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever, we're going to have to stay till it's done. Because this is the 8th session. I think that's enough for this one sutta. So let's see what happens. So there are some ascetics and Brahmins who speak of extinguishment in the present life. They assert the ultimate extinguishment of an existing being in the present life on 5 grounds. And what are the 5 grounds on which they rely? So again, ascetics and Brahmins, these are the religious seekers, the spiritual seekers, the philosophers at the time of the Buddha. These were the people who did have ideas about, views about these kind of issues. Extinguishment here is nibbana. So in other words, you attain the highest in this life. You don't have to wait till after you die, as you do in certain religions and teachings. You actually get it right here in this particular life, and then it carries on afterwards. And you assert the ultimate. This is parama, is the Pali word, and parama means like the highest extinguishment. So the idea here is that there is a kind of top level, and you reach that top level, you can't go beyond. This is kind of the idea of parama here. And you will see that some of these ultimate extinguishments, they're not really all that impressive. They sound pretty ordinary here. But anyway, we'll go through them. And then this important word of an existing being. This is a very important word here, because the idea of an existing being is that, again, this idea of inherent essence in a human being. This idea of self, really, is another way of talking about the idea of a self, of an inherent essence, something that is always there, something which is the real you. You peel off the layers of the onion, the things. Okay, I'm not the body. I see that. I'm not these. I'm not the dukkha feelings. Obviously not. I'm these kind of whatever it is. So you peel off a few layers, and the core comes out. That's the existing being. That's the self. So you can see here the Buddha uses slightly different words to get to the same idea, the idea of an inherent essence in a being. So the ultimate, the highest extinguishment of an existing being in the present life on 5 grounds. So just maybe before I start, just to give, what do we mean by extinguishment here? Because this is kind of important. You have extinguishment of an existing being. And I think maybe this translation is not ideal in this particular case, because when you say extinguishment of a being, it sounds like the being is becoming extinguished. The whole person disappears. But that is not actually what is going on here, because that would mean that's the Buddhist way of thinking about things. The extinguishment of a being, something coming to an end. That's the Buddhist way. But this is not the Buddhist way. These are eternalist views. These are wrong views. So I would say the better translation here would be extinguishment for an existing being. Because that being continues to exist, but it exists in a more refined state. So extinguishment here refers to the ending of dukkha. So when that dukkha ends for that being, that is called extinguishment. But the being itself, that person or whatever it is, carries on. That's kind of the whole idea. So this is a small point of translation, but and I really. No, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes it's best to hold back when you're about to say something here. So don't say that. Okay. So it's extinguishment for. I think that would be my preferred translation here. I'm sure if Bhante Sujata was here, this is his translation. He was sitting next to me. He would grab the microphone and make his case for why of is correct. But anyway, he's not here, so I can say whatever I want. So I'm going to do that. So extinguishment for an existing being, because that existing being is then extinct. Dukkha is really what is being extinguished here. It is. So you reach the highest happiness, and this idea of nibbana is this idea of reaching a state of happiness in the suttas. In Buddhism, it becomes to have a very specific idea. It means the extinguishment of craving, and the complete is slightly different. But the general idea of achieving happiness is what it is about. Okay, so this is now it's exciting. What do these people say about the highest happiness in the present life? And this is what they say. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who have this doctrine and view. When this self amuses itself, supplied and provided with the 5 kinds of sensual stimulation, that is how this self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. So when you are really kind of enjoying yourself to the maximum, and you're enjoying all the sensual pleasures you can think of, putting them all together, maximizing the sensual pleasure of the world, hedonism, also known as hedonism, that is when you attain nibbana. It doesn't sound very Buddhist, does it? It sounds kind of anti-Buddhist. And it's kind of a very shallow view of Nibbana, right? And just the idea of enjoying yourself and having, relationships and enjoying yourself in the world of entertainment and eating and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of obvious that these things are very impermanent and unreliable. A little bit of reflection kind of makes that obvious. But when there is no Buddha around to guide you, of course, quite easily you can fall into that particular trap. This is probably also a very common view in the present world. Most people actually probably fall into this kind of view without really knowing that they have that view. Majority of people in the world don't really practice a spiritual life. They have no idea of happiness and inner happiness or joy of the mind that is separate or apart from the five senses. So all the people in the world who kind of, what is that all saying? You work hard, play hard kind of people. Work hard, play hard. That's kind of the hedonism. You work really hard, make lots of money, and then you kind of maximize your happiness by using that money in certain ways. That's kind of the hedonistic worldview. So I think it's kind of that view underlies a lot of how many people live their life in the world. So actually, from that point of view, it is very interesting here. Anyway, so I'm not sure if there's all that much more to be said about this. And just please, at any point while I go through this, you're very welcome, as always, to interrupt, ask questions, or make comments, or whatever you would like to contribute to today's Sutta class. So, this is how some assert the extinguishment of an existing being in this present life. So here, obviously, extinguishment means reaching the highest happiness by being supplied with the five chords or sensual pleasures. Make as much money as you possibly can, and then just enjoy that wealth afterwards. But someone else says to them, that self of which you speak does exist. I don't deny it. But that is not how this self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. So the idea here is that so there is something deeper going on. This person says, that is not the end of things. The idea of a self which enjoys the sensual pleasure, something deeper in a human being. So he says, yes, I agree with you that there is this aspect of the five senses, but there's something more, something deeper. So in a sense, when it says that self of which you speak does exist, it doesn't, that self is kind of a superficial self. It's not the real self. The real self is this self, the interior one, the one which kind of goes beyond the five senses. That's kind of the point here, because otherwise there's two different selves, which seems a bit strange. So it's really this self which is beyond that actually this is about. So that is not how this self, the kind of further self attains extinguishment in the present life. Why is that? Because sensual pleasures are impermanent, suffering, and perishable. A little bit of introspection will tell you that very quickly, that these things are inherently unreliable. Their decay and perishing give rise to sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, this self enters and remains in the first absorption, which has rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. That is how the self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. So this is the first jhana experience. The first absorption here is the translation for the first jhana. And of course, when you go into the first jhana, you go completely beyond the sensory realm, completely apart from that, and you enter a different reality. And this is why these states are so strange, because you move out of the world that we are so used to. And it's very, kind of unimaginable for us what this world really is like until you get there. So this becomes then the alternative self. This is kind of far superior, obviously, to the previous one. So once you have some of these experiences, you will obviously no longer take the previous self as a real self, and you will kind of automatically take this instead. And this is very, very common. We talked about this before. Yeah, the idea of taking the Samadhi experiences as self, because they have all the hallmarks of what you would call a self. Yeah, this is, and the hallmarks, of course, are the typical hallmarks of what we might call some. It seems, first of all, it seems stable. Yeah, so you can imagine that this might be permanent when you die. There's no change. It is absolute bliss. The idea of the movement of the mind, or the doing of the mind, or the self as doer has all disappeared. These are all the aspects of the first jhana. So they have all those aspects that in other religions are called God. Yeah, you go to the Hindu religion, they talk about the Satchit Ananda, kind of one of the words they used for the Godhead or the Brahma and these kind of things. And Satchit Ananda means literally existing mind bliss. Yeah, and first jhana, or all the jhanas, many of them are a bit like that. They are blissful. It's the mind. It's existing, but there's nothing really apart from that. So it's very closely related to these things. It's very natural to take these things as, I think it's almost unavoidable that you take these things as a self. That is how powerful they are. And it really takes someone like the Buddha to be able to break through that and see that there's something beyond. So first jhana taken as the self which lasts forever after. That is how this self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. And then you carry on forever after. So this is the first jhana here in Bhante Sujato's translation. I'm not going to analyze the first jhana now, because it is we're going to soon do the Samma Samadhi workshop here, and we're going to probably analyze this upside down and backwards, forwards, and in all possible conceivable ways. So we'll wait until then. But is there anyone want to say anything about this? Now? Well, we are here. Is any... Eddie, yeah? Eddie, always good for a question. That's good. Okay, yeah?
Ajahn Brahmali, I feel I want to say something, when I see this thing, because it applies to me, when I first came to Buddhism, before I came to Buddhism, sensual pleasures, I was ignorant of all these things, I had late nights, I went out to meet all into negative things, and after a while, I became sick, So you go to see a doctor's blood tests, x-rays, nothing wrong, there's nothing thing, Till I came into Buddhism, So when I saw this thing, I changed my lifestyle, and I became well.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, so this is a very powerful thing. I'm just sharing this experience. When I see this thing, wow. So if I can say something, I'll say something.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's probably, excellent. All right. Everyone else is happy? Yeah? Good. Okay, so let's carry on. So now the rest of these five ways of attaining the highest extinguishment in the present life are pretty straightforward. So we'll just go through them, and then we look at the conclusion of the whole sutta. That is how some assert the extinguishment of an existing being in the present life. But someone else says to them, that self of which you speak does exist, I don't deny it. But that is not how this self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. Why is that? Because the placing of the mind and keeping it connected there are coarse. But when the placing of the mind and keeping it connected are stilled, this self enters and remains in the second absorption, which has rapture and bliss born of immersion, with internal clarity and confidence and unified mind, without placing the mind and keeping it connected. So here, this is kind of a typical way of analyzing the jhanas. You analyze the coarser part of the jhana, and you see that they are dukkha compared to what might be there otherwise. So here you look at the first jhana, you see that there is some kind of slight movement left in the first jhana, the placing of the mind and keeping it connected. It's vitakka vichara in the Pali. And so that is kind of coarse. So when you abandon that, you get to something even more refined. That is the second jhana. Yeah, so you're kind of seeing dukkha in more and more refined ways. So you let go of something, you go deep. And this is why this is called the highest nibbana in the present life, because you abandon more dukkha, coming to more and more stillness, more and more happiness and bliss as a consequence. That is the coarser part being abandoned. So this is the second absorption, born of immersion, bliss born of immersion, or born of stillness perhaps. The idea here is that the mind at this point is completely solid. There's no movement anymore. That's kind of the idea of Samadhi. Alright, that is how the self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. That is how some assert the extinguishment of an existing being in the present life. But someone else says to them, that self of which you speak does exist. I don't deny it. But that is not how this self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. Why is that? Because the rapture and emotional excitement there are coarse. But with the fading away of rapture, this self enters and remains in the third absorption, where it meditates with equanimity, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss of which the noble ones declare. Equanimous and mindful, one meditates in bliss. So, third jhana, even more profound than the second jhana. So you abandon some of the coarser aspect of happiness and bliss, and you enter the more refined aspects of bliss. And because they are more refined, it is a higher happiness, and for that reason, this is what they call nibbana, because of the degree of happiness that is there. And then you think that you will enter and remain, and you will stay in the third jhana forever after you die. And then you die, and you get a shock when what happens. And this is kind of the downside of wrong view. You get shocked when reality kicks in again. That is how the self attains the ultimate extinguishment in the present life. This is how some assert the extinguishment of an existing being in the present life. So, does it make sense to everyone so far? Yeah? If it doesn't make sense, please say so. You're welcome to complain as well, you know. You don't have to just ask wise questions. You can ask stupid questions, medium questions, slightly wise questions. Sometimes the most stupid questions are the best ones, because that's what everyone wants to ask, but no one dares to ask. So everyone is kind of waiting for you to open the floor and ask the silly questions. Yes, John, thank you.
Is it, the way the Suttas presented these processes, does this mean that people were practicing jhanas before the Buddha arrived?
Yes. So what the Buddha is doing here, he's basically looking at all the existing views in ancient India that were available at the time, and then he was saying, well, these are wrong ways of looking. So this would have been ways it was either practiced at the time of the Buddha or prior or whenever really. Could also be that the Buddha was kind of laying down a theoretical framework, knowing that certain views are possible without them actually being practiced. So it's hard to know for 100% sure that these things were actually practiced at that time. But the Buddha would have known that sometimes these things happen, because sometimes this is just the nature of the world, that sometimes people do practice these things, they misunderstand. Another possibility, which I think is quite likely, is precisely what I was saying initially, is that actually, even in Buddhist circles, we practice these things because we haven't understood the teachings properly. We make that mistake in Buddhist circles. So the Buddha might say, don't make this mistake. This is not a possibility. So I think all of these things together really is probably what the Buddha is getting at. Okay, so let us go on. But someone else says to them, that self of which you speak does exist, I don't deny it. But that's not how this self attains ultimate extinguishment in the present life. Why is that? Because the bliss and enjoyment there are coarse. But giving up pleasure and pain and the ending of the former happiness and sadness, this self enters and remains in the fourth absorption, without pleasure and pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. This is what is so mind-blowing about the Dhamma in many ways. I always like to point this out because in the third jhana you reach the peak of bliss in samsaric existence. Nothing is really higher than this. And then you say, yeah, bliss is coarse, equanimity is better. And then you give up the bliss and you go to equanimity instead. And of course, this whole idea that equanimity and mindfulness is superior to sheer bliss is hard to grasp, right? Very hard to understand how that can possibly be the case. And this is something about the profundity of these teachings. You give up the bliss, you go to equanimity is better. And you can start to see how extinguishment, final ending of things, really starts to make sense if that is actually true. Anyway, so that is how this self attains the ultimate extinguishment in the present life, by reaching the purity of equanimity and mindfulness. That is how some assert the extinguishment of an existing being in the present life. These are the 5 grounds on which those ascetics and Brahmins assert the ultimate extinguishment of an existing being in the present life. Any ascetic or Brahmins who assert the ultimate extinguishment of an existing being in the present life do so on one or other of these 5 grounds. Outside of this, there is none. So, kind of interesting that there is no higher extinguishment. What about the immaterial attainments? You might ask, what about the infinite space, or the sphere of infinite consciousness, or the attainment of nothingness and these kind of things? What happened to them? How come they're not mentioned here? And I don't know. That is the truth, but we can kind of make some guesses, and it's quite possible that they are so rare and attained so rarely that actually there isn't any need for really talking about them. The jhanas are part of the path, so because the 4 jhanas are part of the path, we need to really be on the lookout for the 4 jhanas. If we misunderstand them, we're going to block the access to awakening, and that, of course, is a big problem. But the material attainments may in fact be so rare that they don't really count. The main thing is talking about the 4 jhanas. Did anyone really attain these immaterial attainments prior to the Buddha? That is an interesting question. We know from the famous passages in the Ariyapariyesana Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 26, the Noble Surge. We know, of course, when the Buddha was practicing under his previous teachers, he attained something that was called the attainment of nothingness and the attainment of neither perception or non-perception. It is there, but we don't really know what they refer to, whether they really meant the material attainments or not. But these are things that maybe we can talk about more when we look at Samma Samadhi soon, during the course of the early Buddhist text later on. But it's a little bit strange that they're missing, especially the Buddha says, outside of this there is no other possibility, because anyway, I don't think it matters much for practical purposes, but just to kind of exhaust everything. And then we have the standard refrain at the end: the realized one understands this, and those who genuinely praise the realized one would rightly speak of these things. So just to remind again, the idea here is that people often praise the Buddha for all the superficial things. You see that in the suttas, that people say, "Oh, look at this Buddha. He's perfect in conduct. He walks really nicely, and he wears his robes in the right way, and he looks like the real deal." And the Buddha says, "Well, all this thing about sila is kind of not really the point." The point of the Buddha is the insight he has, and that insight is part of that is the understanding of what is right view, what is wrong view in the world. That's a very important part of that insight, because that really comes from the insight into non-self. That is what makes the Buddha special. The difference between Buddhism and any other spiritual teaching, any other religion, any other philosophy is precisely the insight into non-self. The Buddha says that in the Chula Sihanada Sutta, the shorter discourse on the lion's roar, Majjhima Nikaya number 11, you find that there. And this is the one thing that really distinguishes Buddhism. So this is what we should look at, the Buddha's ability to understand all the various philosophies in the world in the sense of where they lead, where they go in terms of happiness and suffering and leading to Nibbana and these kind of things. That is what matters. Okay? These are the 44 grounds on which those ascetics and Brahmins who theorize about the future assert various hypotheses concerning the future. Any ascetic or Brahmin who theorizes about the future do so on one or other of these 44 grounds. So this was the last 5 of these 44 grounds. All right? Outside of this there is none. The realized one understands this, and those who genuinely praise the realized one would rightly speak of these things. These are the 62 grounds on which those ascetics and Brahmins who theorize about the past and the future assert various hypotheses concerning the past and the future. And ascetic or Brahmins who theorize about the past or the future do so on one or other of these 62 grounds. Outside of this, there is none. The realized one understands this. If you hold on to and attach to these grounds for views, it leads to such and such a destiny in the next life. He understands this and what goes beyond this. And since he does not misapprehend that understanding, he has realized extinguishment within himself. Having truly understood the origin, ending, gratification, drawback, and escape from feelings, the realized one is freed through non-grasping. So this is, again, this powerful message by which he summarizes all of these views and why they are problematic. Yeah? And so if you hold on to or grasp, he translates here as grounds for views. The Pali word is dittitthana, and thana is like a basis or foundation. It literally means to stand. In fact, the Pali word thana, sthana in Sanskrit, is directly related to the English word stand. Yeah, or actually all European languages probably have that word. And so it means like standpoints or basis for views, but really it just means views. So you could translate this as if you hold on to, attach to these views, that would be equally correct. And it wouldn't really, because a standpoint for a view here is just the view itself. It doesn't really add much. It's a bit confusing when you get these extra words in there, because you start to over-interpret. You start to look for things that actually are not really important in this particular context. So when you hold on to these views, it leads to such and such destiny in the future life. Yeah, these views lead to rebirth. And this is kind of the interesting thing here, is that they're not just unhelpful because you get disappointed at the end of the day, it doesn't go where you think, but the whole thing is actually these things are the thing that perpetuate samsaric existence, perpetuate going on from life to life. You are grasping onto things. Your mind inclines to certain things. You exist in that realm where you're interested in these particular views. And because you exist in that realm, your mind is inclining towards them, craving for them, moving towards them, heading towards something else, propelling and projecting the mind into the future. And this is what is happening here. So every time we crave for something or grasp for something, we're actually projecting the mind into the future, because the mind is looking for something in the future. All of these views are about a certain future result, eternal life. Yeah. So if you think there's going to be eternal life, and you want that because your sense of self wants to exist, then you are actually projecting yourself into that future. So this is why these things are so troublesome, and why they are so problematic, and why all of these views are, ultimately you need to overcome them. So how do we overcome them? And this is also, I think, very important. One way of not overcoming them is to deny these things and to say, and to pretend that we haven't got these views or whatever. That doesn't really work either, because these views are very deep-seated. They're part of the kind of our psychological makeup. These come from the sense of self, and we can't get rid of the sense of self simply by denying our views. So very likely you have some kind of view about the future, and you may, if I ask you what your view is, you may say, yeah, my view is that Nibbana, the cessation. You may say that, but deep down, maybe you don't feel that. You know what I mean? It's like viewing things, the theoretical view that we have and the actual emotional view that we have is actually different. We agree with the Buddha because, well, the Buddha said so how can we not agree? So the Buddha said, okay, there's extinguishment, ending, everything. Okay, so I agree with that. But really, your actual view, your deep down emotional, what you're holding on to emotionally is actually different. Emotionally, you still probably want to exist, If I say, are you ready to die? You probably say, no, Or is anyone here ready to die? Just testing, If someone says, I'd like to kill you to help you quicken your path to Nibbana, you probably say, no, thank you, I'd rather wait till it happens by itself or something. And that is the emotional view, that's the real view, that's the actual, what you're actually experiencing. So view here is, one thing is kind of the ideal we are trying to reach, another thing is how we actually feel about the world, and these things are often quite different. And this again is also different from the Buddhist idea. We often talk about the difference between Sakkaya Ditthi, which is the view of an existing entity. This is the fetter which you get rid of when you become a stream mentor, Sakkaya Ditthi. We talk about that view, and then we compare that to what is called asmimana. Asmimana is the conceit I am. And which is much deeper. Asmimana is only given up when you become a arahant, the feeling of I am. But the other one, Sakkaya Ditthi, is given up when you become a stream mentor. And that's different again, because then you actually do have the right view. You do have the right view. You really know that as ending of things is right and good. But you still have certain feelings and perceptions and thoughts that are counter to that. But for most people, it's much more superficial than that. Actually, yes, you may agree with the view, but it's not really your view at all. It is actually just a superficial, additional thing that you put on top of your real views, which are different. Am I making any sense at all now? Yeah? Okay, I'm worried that I'm kind of really just babbling away and saying things that only I understand. That's the problem. You think you're being clear, but sometimes maybe you're not. Please feel free to ask if you don't understand what I'm talking about. So you hold on to these things, and because you hold on to these things, you're projecting yourself into the future. And one of the things I said here before is that even if you are looking to be annihilated, you are an annihilationist, that too is a craving about the future, because annihilation is always in the future. It's always something where you want to go. It's a craving that you have, and for that reason, you actually keep on projecting yourself into the future, just like you do if you have an eternalist view. So you attach to these views, and because of that, you are actually perpetuating samsaric existence as a consequence. So the realized one, the Buddha, he understands this, the Tathagata, this is how the Buddha talks about himself, he understands this, and he understands what goes beyond. What goes beyond is the ending of this individuality, the ending of the I am delusion and all of that. And yet, since he does not misapprehend that understanding, he has realized extinguishment within himself. So the idea, misapprehend, I don't really like that translation. Because the Pali word, actually let me check what the Pali word is. Now it's good that I have two computers, so I can check on one what I'm doing on the other. Always have two computers ready. This is how you become greedy. You think you always have to have two computers, and before you know it, you have two, and then you have three. uh, okay. Yeah, so the Pali word is paramasati. Yeah. And paramasati is a word which just means to grasp and hold on to in the suttas. It doesn't really mean misgrasp or mishold. Misapprehend means like holding in the wrong way. Yeah, it doesn't really mean that. It just means grasping. Yeah. And the reason why, but the reason why this is often translated as misapprehend is because that seems sometimes to be the problem. The problem may seem, for example, in the suttas, it talks about grasping silabbata paramasa, and paramasa is the same word when you grasp onto virtue and things, right? And there it says you should not misapprehend sila, virtues and things, but actually it is the grasping onto virtues which is the problem, and that is what you overcome when you become a stream enterer. Everyone else will grasp them to some extent, and here we have the same problem. The problem is that it's not so much that you misapprehend that understanding, but that you don't grasp it at all. That is kind of the point here. So he does not grasp that understanding. Yeah, there's no holding on to these views anymore, because he has realized extinguishment within himself. When you have realized something, there's no need for holding on to it anymore. Before you realize it, there will be some degree of holding on. Once you have seen it, then you let go. And this is another interesting point in the suttas, because very often you find in some of the kind of very inspirational suttas that you find in the Sutta Nipata, for example, in the Atthakavagga, which is one of those ancient parts of the Pali Canon, you find suttas where it says that the Buddha has given up all views. So what does that mean, given up all views? Does that mean that the Buddha has no views? And this is a common argument in Buddhist circles, that the Buddha doesn't have any views. But then again, he teaches us all these things. He says that there is rebirth. It certainly sounds like he has views. And the solution to that problem is simply that the Buddha, when he says he doesn't have any views, what it means, he doesn't grasp any views. He knows, so he doesn't need to hold on to these things. If he is challenged, he doesn't feel defensive. He doesn't feel that he has to argue back or anything like that. So this is kind of the power of the Buddha. There's no holding on to these things. There is just understanding. And this is what we're seeing here. He doesn't hold on to any of this. He understands this. And for that reason, he has realized extinguishment within himself. And here, extinguishment, nibbana, means the real deal. Yeah, this is the nibbana where there is no greed, hatred, or delusion anymore. There's no holding on to things. Holding on. If you hold on to things, by definition, there's some kind of greed or something there which isn't quite right yet. You're not yet fully extinguished. So the Buddha is pretty cool. Yeah, you can challenge him, and he doesn't kind of. He doesn't say anything back. He just, oh yeah, whatever, that's your point of view. Or I'm not sure what he would say. Maybe he wouldn't say that, but something like that. Having truly understood the origin, ending, the gratification, drawback, and escape from feelings, the realized one is freed through non-grasping here. And this is I will make this point again, but this is kind of a very interesting point, how he suddenly brings in feelings, right? So you can see the non-grasping here obviously refers back to what we have just seen. He does not grasp that understanding, yeah? So he's freed through non-grasping. But the way that non-grasping happens is by understanding feelings. But we're talking about views here. What is the connection between views and feelings? And of course, and this is kind of what is so interesting about this, is that actually there's a very, very close connection between views and feelings. Because the views that we have are connected with what feels good to us. If there is some view, the way we choose our views is not because we are supremely rational. The way we choose our views is because what feels good to us. Yeah, what we are used to, what we somehow have been taught, what our parents taught us, what we have learned at the Buddhist society or I don't know what. Yeah, these, because they feel good. That is where we hold on to things. And this is such an extraordinarily useful insight, because once you understand that your views are largely come about because how you feel about them, you stop taking them so seriously. Yeah, once you start to realize actually logic and these things actually may only be a small part of it, and actually working in the working for feelings anyway. Feeling is the boss, and then logic comes kind of based on those feelings. Then you stop taking it so seriously. And this is such a relief, not to take our views so seriously, and being able to kind of just go with the flow instead. If someone challenges you about rebirth, you can just shrug your shoulders. Okay, whatever, I don't really know, but I believe it. But it's uncertain like everything else, and that's kind of really nice. But feelings are the critical thing. When you, because of our sense of self, and someone comes around with an eternalist idea, it will feel good because yourself will feel. You will feel like yourself is satisfied. It will exist forever. Yeah, me. This, the real, the me. I can go on forever after in a happy place, endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasures, and just enjoy myself forever after. Hooray! That's what it feels like. So because it feels like, you will be drawn to that automatically. But then the Buddha comes along and says something else, and you think, wait a minute, maybe I got this wrong. So then you kind of, because the Buddha is he has something about him, you listen to that. That feels good at that particular point. So there is some logic there. I'm not saying there's no logic, but feeling tends to be the underlying thing that drives our views. And that is kind of very, very fascinating. Please, yes.
So when you say views, is it a combination of perception and thoughts?
When I say views, I mean like it's related to perception and thoughts, because your views will will kind of decide how you think about things and how you perceive things in the world. But a view is more like, what do you think happens after I die? And you say, I think after I die I'm going to last forever, right? That's your view. It's like a thing which underlies the whole thing. Or when I die, everything will be annihilated. So you can see that they're all related to each other, but view is often more stable, whereas thoughts and perceptions arise and come. The view will kind of underlie it in a more stable way.
So view is like an overarching view, and these momentary perceptions. And so sometimes I know if I think I like something before, when I experience it, I'll have a confirmation of the good feeling. But once I change my mind, then it will become negative. So sometimes you can see your perception changing from. So is view much bigger, and then it's gradual to change a view?
So views, I mean, what we're talking about views here, really, we're talking about views that have to do with the spiritual life. That's why the kind of the focus is on things like eternalism and annihilationism, and these tend to be very sticky views. When someone is committed to kind of God or whatever, then they kind of tend to hold on to that quite strongly. And I mean, sometimes people change. They start out believing God, then they kind of change. But these are kind of fairly strong things. Whereas thoughts and perceptions, as you say, can change quite quickly. And then you can get an aversion to the thought you had before because suddenly you have turned around. So, yeah. All right. So you understand all of these things, and because you understand that feelings are unreliable, you understand that all the views that are built on those feelings must also be unreliable. If the feelings are uncertain, feelings change depending on the, whatever conditions are prevalent. Then, when those feelings change, your views will no longer kind of be able to. They will no longer be supported by those feelings, and because of that, you're going to feel like your views are kind of silly or they're wrong or whatever, and you stop grasping them. Yes, please.
So, with the feelings as such, when you have the emotions attached and the feelings are all combined together, then that's when you grasp and you hold.
Yeah.
When you let go of that, there becomes a freedom within that, surely.
Yeah, exactly. That's right, yeah. Indeed. Yeah, so there's a freedom. Of course, yes, absolutely. So the idea of holding on to things is a bad idea, and that freedom also implies the fact that you stop holding on to those views and grasping those views, because you understand that those views are conditioned, and you give them up, and you actually go to actually you still have a view after that, but it's a different kind of view. You give up all of those previous views, and you get the Buddhist view, which is the idea of what Nibbana really is like, and cessation, all that kind of thing. So you have a new view, but you have it in a different way than you had before, because you no longer grasp it, and things just tend to flow much more.
But you then still have emotions.
Still have emotions, yeah. True. But remember, this is not about emotions when we talk about feelings here. Feelings is kind of the Buddhist idea of feeling, good, bad, neutral. So emotions, however, can be divided up into those categories. Emotions also are good, bad, and neutral. You have good and bad and neutral emotions. So emotions can be broken down into the three kinds of feelings, and then everything can be then expressed in terms of feelings rather than emotions. All right. These are the principles: deep, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, sublime, beyond the scope of logic, subtle, comprehensible to the astute, which the realized one makes known after realizing them with his own insight. And those who genuinely praise the realized one would rightly speak of these things. So this is the Dhamma, the principles, the Dhammas are deep, hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful, sublime. This is kind of what is so one of those beautiful things about when you become wise, is that wisdom always comes with a lot of positive, nice feelings. The more profound your insight is, when you see things according to reality, you don't suffer because of that. Truth is always liberating. Truth liberates you. And that liberation is always a very positive experience. So the more profound it is, the more peaceful and sublime it's going to be. Duddhasa, it can also be called rare to see. I mean, hard. What do we mean by the word hard? Rare is another way of putting it. Because hard, it's not hard in the sense of, going to school or university. It's just hard in the sense that you have to overcome your defilements. You have to practice the path correctly. Is it hard to be kind? Well, it's kind of almost like the wrong question, right? It's not hard. It's just that you need to train yourself. You need to change your attitude and your mental states. So it's important not to kind of make this more difficult than it actually is. If you can consistently be kind, consistently live well, then you are on the right track and you are kind of moving in the right direction. But if you are a person who likes to be immoral and doesn't care about the spiritual path, then it's going to be really hard because you're heading in the wrong direction. So it really depends on how we look at this. Beyond the scope of logic, atakavachara. This is kind of nice. It's not that these things are things to be realized, not things that you can logically hammer out, because logic is always limited by the assumptions that you put into it. Got the wrong assumptions, logic is not going to work out. Subtle, comprehensible to the astute. So you have to be astute. You're going to be astute? Astute here is like wise, pandita, etc. This is the important point here. So you have to be astute. You have to be careful. You have to be circumspect. You have to do things wisely. Anyway, it's a nice list, and some of these lists, all of these lists, are really worthwhile reflecting on a little bit, because there's lots of information there. But I've talked about this list so many times during this course, I'm just going to leave it at that. So, now we have finished all the 62 views, and now we're going to come to some of the summary paragraphs at the very end. So, part 4 of the sutta, the grounds for assertions about self and the cosmos, anxiety and evasiveness. Now, these things are only the feelings of those who do not know and see. The agitation and evasiveness of those under the sway of craving. So these 62 views that we have been looking at, what they are only the feelings of those who do not know and see. Again, it's the same idea again we had before. The idea that feeling lies behind all of this. Those who do not know and see, obviously, are those who haven't got insight into these things. You haven't seen it properly. And because you haven't got that insight, you are driven by your feelings. Your feelings really determine everything, including your views. These views are rooted in the feelings for those who don't know and see. They are the agitation and evasiveness. Evasiveness is vipandita, means almost like writhing or wriggling, the agitation and wriggling of those under the sway of craving. Craving is in charge. Craving is the boss. Tanhadasa, you are the slave of craving, quite literally in the suttas. Well, literally, maybe that's the wrong word, but you are the slave of craving. And because of that craving, you think about things, you try to work out the world, you take up views, and all of this searching for views, looking for things, trying to find a way in this samsaric existence which will satisfy you and make you happy. This is the agitation and wriggling and writhing, trying to kind of find satisfaction in the realm which is inherently unsatisfactory. So under the sway of craving, we are agitated and writhe, trying to find and hold views that are going to make us happy and feel well, something which actually turns out to be impossible. You have to give all of that up and go to a deeper reality instead. So what are these things? Well, namely, when those ascetics and Brahmins assert that the self and the cosmos are eternal on 4 grounds. We've discussed all of these views before, so I'm not going to repeat anything here. Partially eternal, finite, infinite, equivocation of 4 grounds, cosmos arose by chance, etc., etc. All of these views we have been talking about. I'm just going to go through it. So when those ascetics and Brahmins theorize about the past and the future on these 62 grounds, these things are only the feelings of those who do not know and see, the agitation and evasiveness of those under the sway of craving. Conditioned by contact. Now these things are conditioned by contact, namely when those ascetics and Brahmins assert the self and the cosmos, etc., etc., all the 62 views again. So it is conditioned by contact. Feelings arise because of contact. Passa is the Pali word. Comes from the verb pussati, which literally means to touch something. So touching means being in contact with the world. And the way that we contact the world is through the 6 senses, right? So we contact the world through the 6 senses. It basically, these days I like to use the word experience, because experience is really easy to understand. It's conditioned by experience. So I'm not sure if it is the ideal translation. In some contexts it may not work, but in some contexts it actually works really well. So it is conditioned by experience. So as long as there is experience, you will feel the world from that experience. Feeling is a very important aspect of experience, right? So you feel, you experience the world, then you feel. Because you feel, you take up views, you grasp those views, etc., etc. So experience is kind of the root here, the Buddha is saying. So experience is problematic, according to the Buddha. 62 views again. Then we come to a new paragraph, not possible. Now when those ascetics and Brahmins theorize about the past and the future on these 62 grounds, it is not possible that they should experience these things without contact. Again making the point that contact is kind of the or experience is the root here, perhaps, the root problem. Dependent origination. Now, when those ascetics and Brahmins theorize about the past and the future on these 62 grounds, all of them experience this by repeated contact to the 6 sense fields. The 6 senses, their feeling is a condition for craving. Craving is a condition for grasping. Grasping is a condition for continued existence, or existence. Existence is a condition for rebirth. Rebirth is a condition for old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress to come to be. So, dependent origination is what we are seeing here. We're seeing the last half of it. So you experience the world because you experience the world you feel. A feeling, either you like it or you don't like it, or it's neutral. Because of that you crave. So your views, again, because you crave for those feelings, to satisfy that craving, you come up with views. This is where the views come in. To satisfy that craving, you have ideas about how to think about the world, and those views become part of the grasping derived from craving. And dittupadana is one of those graspings, the grasping of views. And because you are grasping onto something, this becomes something that obsesses your mind. You think about these things, these views become important to you, you reflect on them. And that obsession, that becomes kind of your existence. All the things we think about, etc. This is your mental realm, your personal existence. And so you make kamma according to whatever you think about, whatever you hang out in your mind. And that kamma, that craving, all of these things together, that drive, that desire, or that propelling yourself into the future. And that's how rebirth then arises. You notice here how Bhante Sujato translates jati as rebirth. And I think this is an interesting point. Some people say, but doesn't jati mean birth? And what is the motivation here for translating as a rebirth rather than birth? How can we justify that? Does it mean birth or does it mean rebirth? Well, the point here, and I think this is the very important point of translation that we need to kind of reflect on when we translate these ancient suttas, is that words that were used in those days, whatever their literal meaning is, that's not really what we're trying to arrive at. What we're trying to arrive at is an understanding of the suttas that was the same as those people at that time would understand the suttas. So when the Buddha said that birth arises from the condition of existence, what the ancient Indian people would have heard when they heard the word jati is rebirth, because for them, when there is birth, there is rebirth. These two are not separate; they are the same thing. So for us to be able to create that same meaning in English, we have to translate with rebirth, because that is what they would have heard. So that is why it is so important to understand a little bit about that whole culture, the whole background to the suttas, understand some of the other philosophical teachings that existed at that time. And as you understand kind of the overall outlook of that culture, as you understand the context in which these words are used, then you can translate much more accurately. The idea of translating literally is wrong, because there is no such thing as literal translation. What we want to translate is meaning. Meaning is what it's all about, because we are trying to transmit meaning to people, not literal words. That's kind of irrelevant. It's meaning that is important. So this is why translation can be so difficult, because you actually have to have a very broad understanding of what is going on to be able to understand the meaning behind some of these concepts. There's some very interesting advice given by the translators of old, where they say when you translate, first of all, you should never translate a word, maybe translate a sentence, but ideally you translate paragraph by paragraph, because paragraph, that's where the meaning kind of becomes clear. But actually you need much more than that. What you really need is you need a full understanding. The broader your understanding is, the easier it is to understand any single paragraph or sentence within the Pali Suttas. So this is why translation is such a difficult task, and really you need to have been around for a long time. It's fascinating because sometimes I have watched some of these academics trying to translate the suttas. And sometimes, even though they are the best linguists in the world, they know how to derive the roots of the words, they know all the prefixes, they know all the grammatical endings, they know how to derive it into the various, what are they called, Indo-Aryan kind of sub-languages, and they have this kind of lots of understanding in terms of linguistics. But when it comes to translation, sometimes they make elementary mistakes. And that is because of a lack of understanding of the Dhamma, a lack of understanding of the broader the culture and what these things are actually pointing at. So it's okay to have an academic understanding, but it's not enough. You need much more than that. And this kind of comes out in this sort of situation. So rebirth here is then a good translation. A rebirth is a condition for old age, death. Yeah. So you could even say re-old age and re-death. Because if it is rebirth, well, that means that there is an old age beyond the current life, yeah? But that becomes a bit strange. You can't really say re-old age, I think, yeah. Re-death, yeah, maybe, not sure, I don't know. Maybe. I think those words are probably good enough, and they kind of stand the way they are here. All right. Any comments on that? Eddie, yeah, okay.
Ajahn Brahmali,
Yo.
this is a very important, deep sutta, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Applies to all of us, okay? I was just thinking, would it be more easier to bring out the 5 aggregates, the 5 skandhas, aggregates, that's the making of us, mind or matter? The mind, you know, okay, there's aggregates, there's feeling, this thing, there's our mind, okay? There's a perception, there's a mental formation, it's all down there, you know. So if you see it from the bird's eye view down, you know, that could be, how to say, easier to, for me, okay, easier to understand, you see what I mean? From the bird's eye view, to understand this, okay, it's a very deep thing. Just to see it like that, these things, people might not think, no. So if you can see, the 5 aggregates, that's the making of us. And this is related to the making of us. It's deep, very deep, you know. Many people can't see it, the thing. You know. You understand? You can see it. Maybe I can see it, okay? For a normal person, if you bring the 5 aggregates, there's us. There's feeling in us. There's the thoughts, mental formation, perception, all these things, you know.
Yeah.
So, you understand? You see what I mean?
You mean that you have to bring it back to
No,
our present experience? What do you mean?
These are all very deep things. I can see it.
Okay, good. I'm glad.
So sorry, maybe it's a very good sutta, this, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what I'm trying to say is, if you can relate this to the making of us, the 5 aggregates, us, you know, there's a feeling in us.
You mean your
thoughts?
You mean your personal 5 khandhas or just general 5 khandhas?
No, that's all of us.
All of us. Even better to relate it to your personal ones. Even more powerful. That's when you really get insight.
5 aggregates applies to everybody. Everybody's got feeling. They've got
but you have to start somewhere,
they have perception. They have the mental forming ideas. All these things.
Start with yourself. That's even better. Because that's what you can really understand.
Maybe
you know. That's what you can understand.
No, it's hard to. Maybe I talk to you. And it's hard to talk on the phone like that. You know? But this is a very deep sutta.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very, very important to us all. You know.
Let's carry on, Eddie. And you're probably right about that. But let's carry on. Yeah. Okay, so now we come to the last part of the sutta, the end of the round. When a mendicant truly understands the 6 fields of contacts, origin, ending, gratification, drawback, and escape, they understand what lies beyond all these things. So the 6 fields of contact, these are the kind of basically the 6 senses, often called the 6 senses. And so your 6 senses, we experience things through the 6 senses. So the 6 sense experiences might be another translation of this. So you understand the origin of this, the ending of this, how these things arise, how they come to an end. Especially, most importantly, the rebirth process. Gratification and drawback, these are kind of standard categories in the suttas. Asada and adinava basically means that you you understand why it is we are attached to these things and why there is a problem. And when you understand that the problem is really, that is the thing we need to deal with, then you look for the escape and you find the escape. And once you see that, then you have understood all of this. Just briefly, I've discussed all of these things before. I don't want to repeat myself too much. All of these ascetics and Brahmins who theorize about the past or the future are trapped in the net of these 62 grounds. So wherever they emerge, they are caught and trapped in this very net. Yeah, so all ascetics and Brahmins, basically, who theorize about the past and the future, all philosophers, all religious people, or spiritual people, outside of Buddhism, not even outside of Buddha, outside of the Dhamma as taught by the Buddha. Many Buddhists too are probably trapped in this particular views. Yeah, everyone. So this is kind of, and why? Well, simply because it all relates to this sense of self, which is kind of the problem everywhere, pretty much, where you look. So wherever you emerge, emerging here means like almost like acquiring a view. As soon as you acquire a view, bang, this net catches you. You're caught like a fish in the net of views. It's a nice way of thinking about it. And only by going beyond this completely and seeing something more profound can you actually avoid getting caught in this net and go beyond it. Suppose a deft fisherman or his apprentice were to cast a fine meshed net over a small pond. They would think any sizable creatures in this pond will be trapped in the net. Wherever they emerge, they are caught and trapped in this very net. In the same way, all of these ascetics and Brahmins who theorize about the past or the future are trapped in the net of these 62 grounds. So that wherever they emerge, they are caught and trapped in this very net. The realized one's body remains, but his conduit to rebirth has been cut off. As long as his body remains, he will be seen by gods and humans. But when his body breaks up after life has ended, gods and humans will see him no more. The conduit to rebirth, this is craving, right? Craving is the conduit, it's like the thing that leads to rebirth. Neti is the Pali word. So there is no conduit anymore. You have cut off the possibility. There's nothing that kind of, there's no channel that drives you on into rebirth in the future. So you just hang around in this life. Your body still remains and you can still be seen by gods and humans. But when the body breaks up, gods and humans will see him no more. There is no way you can see the Buddha. The Buddha, even if you have some kind of psychic powers and you can see all the gods and everything in the universe, the Buddha will not be there. Doesn't matter what kind of mind you have made up. Doesn't matter what kind of divine eye vision or what's the word I use these days? Divine. Anyway, whatever vision you have, there's no way you can actually see that Buddha anymore. This is a very important statement. Because what it means is that, sometimes you hear stories, even in the present day, about people who supposedly see the Buddha, or they meet the Buddha, or they meet arahants, or whatever. That's impossible. They don't exist anymore. That's the whole point of these things, that you cannot meet these things. So if someone claims to meet the Buddha and arahant, well, you know that whatever they did, it wasn't the real thing. You can be sure of that. So maybe it was a nimitta, maybe it was some kind of vision they had, maybe something like that. But actually the idea that they met a Buddha and arahant, that's actually impossible. And if you have that view, if you really think that you met the Buddha and an arahant, it means that you have some kind of eternalist view. It means basically you have wrong view. It's a very useful thing to know, because when you start reading and hearing about various teachers, the way they express the Dhamma, you start to realize that actually there is a lot of problems with how some Buddhists teach the Dhamma in the world. And it's good to have some ground. This is why I really like to focus on the suttas sometimes, because they give you a grounding that is more profound than what you ordinarily see. And this sutta in particular has a lot of these statements that kind of make it very clear how the Buddha differs from almost any other outlook anywhere in the world. When the stalk of a bunch of mangoes is cut, all the mangoes attached to the stalk will follow along. In the same way, the realized one's body remains, but his conduit to rebirth has been cut off. As long as his body remains, he will be seen by gods and humans. But when his body breaks up after life has ended, gods and humans will see him no more. So the stalk of a bunch of mangoes is cut. Yeah, it's like it's been cut from the tree. There is no sap anymore that can make those mangoes grow. Craving is often kind of related to the idea of a sap, something which makes things grow, the moisture or whatever. All of that has been cut off. Those mangoes will come to be just disappear eventually, and there will be no more seeds which will kind of then go planted into the ground, and they will sprout the next generation of mangoes, a bit like the idea of rebirth. All of that is impossible. It's been cut off at the root, as it says elsewhere in the sutta. There's no future anymore for those mangoes. When he had spoken, Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, "It is incredible, sir, it is amazing. What is the name of this exposition of the teaching?" Well then, Ananda, you may remember this exposition of the teaching as the net of meaning. Net of meaning. Okay. I've got to check. I can't remember what the Pali is. Yeah, I'm going to check this out. Jala, Jala means that's what it means, the net of meaning. That's pretty much what it means. So that's so the net of meaning. It's quite interesting. The net of the teaching, that's the Dhammajala, the Dhammajala, Jala being the net. The prime net, this is the Brahmajala, right there. Prime in the sense of the highest kind of thing, the highest net or the best net or something like that. The net of views, Ditti Jala presumably, yes, Ditti Jala. And the last one is the supreme victory in battle. Sangama Vijayo is the last one. Anuttaro Sangama Vijayo is the last one. So there you have, these are the alternative names for this particular sutta. Sometimes the Buddha gives names to suttas in this way. The ending of the teaching comes and the Buddha actually gives a name to the sutta. And you can take it that when the Buddha gives a name to the sutta, it is something important, right? Remember this. This is the name of this. This is how you should think about it in the future. So this matters. And one of the very interesting things about the Brahmajala Sutta, and I didn't mention this at the very beginning, I think, but it's a long time since we started this sutta, maybe a year ago or something. What is interesting about it is that it is referred to elsewhere in the suttas. Elsewhere it talks about the net of 62 views. So that's kind of fascinating. So that means that this was something that was talked about among the ascetics and Brahmins. And this is one way of ascertaining or deciding that this is an important sutta according to the early Buddhist teachings. The Brahmajala. Buddha gives it a name. It is referred to elsewhere. It has all of these kind of things about it, which makes it profound and interesting. So this is why I have gone through this in quite a bit of detail. So that is the session 8. Let's just go to the very end of this sutta. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said. And while this discourse was being spoken, the galaxy shook. Well, the galaxy was getting a bit worried when this. Why does the galaxy shake? What does the discourse have to do with the galaxy? Kind of weird. I mean, the galaxy should be pretty relaxed, even though the Buddha gives a discourse. Doesn't really have anything to do with the galaxy. Well, first of all, what is the word that the Buddha that Bhante Sujato translates as galaxy here? It is the 10,000-fold world system. The Dasa Sahasaloka Dhatu. I think it's the Dasa Sahasaloka Dhatu that he translates as galaxy here. So, what is a world system? Dasasahasi lokadhatu. What is a world system? And this is fascinating because world systems are actually described in the suttas. And so a world system is described as kind of the earth. Yeah, the way they describe the earth is a bit like, okay, like India and the kind of the countries around, yeah, and the 4 oceans or whatever. And then the moon, and then the sun, yeah? So basically, Earth, Moon, and Sun, basically we're talking about the solar system. That's what it seems like, yeah? So basically what a world system, Lokadhatu, is a solar system. And attached to that solar system, you have all the various levels of beings. You have human beings, you have animals, ghosts, you have all of the various heavenly realms going all the way up to the Brahmaloka are attached. So every solar system seems to have its own kind of heavenly realms, right, that belong to that solar system. And that's when people ask, well, where are these gods that we're supposed to see? We can't see them, so how can we believe in what we can't see? Well, actually, they are right here. They are part of the same solar system as us. The reason we can't see them is simply because the way they manifest with a more refined body, a more refined matter. So that's why they're not directly visible to the coarse human faculties that we have as human beings. We can see animals, but that's about it. But they're basically here. They're part of this same system as we are part of. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Maybe there are devas here today. Maybe they like to hang. I don't know if they like to hang out at Dhammaloka. Maybe they do. Probably do. Well, it's a nice place for devas to hang out. And so this is one world system. Then there's a 10,000-fold world system. Yeah, maybe that is equivalent to a galaxy. How many solar systems are there in our galaxy? Well, I don't know. I don't think anyone knows because we know that there are a few billion stars, but solar systems is a different matter. So maybe galaxy is not the wrong translation. So and as you go out, as you expand the number of world systems, there are all these heavenly realms that are connected to this particular solar system, but when there are more solar systems, they are like the Brahmas, the higher Brahmas, they kind of rule over many solar systems. So when you go up really high up, you have these kind of Maha-Brahmas that maybe rule the entire galaxy. Maybe ruled is the wrong word. I don't think they do anything. They just kind of, they just chill, because what Brahmas do, they kind of just have lots of metta and compassion and that sort of thing. And so I think the idea here, when they say the 10,000-fold world system, this is just my interpretation, is that these Brahmas, they hear this discourse. And when they hear this discourse, they start to quake and tremble. Because they realize, actually, wow, if this is true, I have wrong view. I got things wrong. I might die down the track. I am subject to dependent origination. This is one of the things you find in the suttas, that the gods of the heavenly realms, they start to tremble, they start to become fearful, because they understand that actually the entire outlook has been wrong all the time. They can't remember having been born, so that's kind of scary to them. So imagine it. So this may be what is going on. The Brahma, which is kind of behind the 10,000 world system, that Brahma shakes, and then maybe that causes the whole universe, the whole galaxy to shake and tremble at the same time. What do you think? Am I on thin ice, or am I? Yeah.
Very interesting, Ajahn Brahmali. The Mahayana text.
Yeah.
It talk about 3,000 great world systems. Okay. So these are all mysteries. Mysteries. Okay. So it shakes. It's because the truth, the Buddha found the truth. The thing. So it's already, like, I see it shake the thing now. Also, what do you think, Ajahn Brahmali? Just in Theravada, we have the 31 planes of existence.
Yeah.
The 31st one is the Nibbana. So there's 30 left now.
No, Nibbana is not a realm of existence. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
The Nibbana is out. Sorry, it's outside.
Yeah.
Outside. Sorry. Outside.
Or beyond,
sorry,
or whatever.
It's not. It's outside the 31s now.
Yeah.
So there's 3. Is there any connection, or you see any connection there with our 31 planes of nearby? Is outside that.
Yeah. Connection between what?
3,000. Yeah, the world system. I was just thinking. The Mahayana, they state that. I don't know whether the Sutta state. I don't know.
It does. There is a sutta in the Gutra Nikaya 3 is 81, which talks about the what is it, a billion world system, the 1,000-fold was in the 1,000 to the second power world system, the 1,000 to the third power world system. That's like maybe a similar kind of thing here. But I think it's just that a world system contains all these realms, right? So it's kind of a, it doesn't actually relate to a particular realm. All of these realms are part of this world system. So, yeah.
And they also say,
okay, I did. Maybe give someone else a chance to ask, because other people are here as well. So, thank you. Yeah. Please, Linda. Yeah.
Brahma shakes. What does that actually mean? Is it like a being, or is it?
Yeah, that would be a being. One of these beings that have been reborn because of their metta or karuna, compassion or whatever, or jhana state, be reborn very highly, and then maybe they come out of that jhana for a short while and hear the discourse of the Buddha or something like that, and then they kind of start to tremble because they realize that actually their view is wrong. Yeah.
So why does that make all the systems quake?
Well, because Brahma is like the boss for this whole system.
Okay.
So the Brahma is kind of behind. Brahma is looking after this whole galaxy. And when Brahma quakes, well, the whole galaxy will be affected, because this is kind of his baby, almost, this galaxy, right? So the whole galaxy kind of is affected. I don't know exactly how it works, but the thing is that the world is much more mental than we normally think of the world. The mind is far more powerful than we think. So if Brahma, who is behind the whole galaxy, if Brahma quakes, well, it's very likely to have an effect on what we normally think of as material phenomena, because those material phenomena are probably related to the mind in a much deeper way than we normally think of these things. That's why I say there is a connection there. Maybe it's all a bit speculative, I have to admit, but a bit of speculation is fun, I reckon. So that's why I'm doing this. Yeah.
Ajahn, just to set the pretext, it's not a very important question, and it's not that I'm nitpicking the contradiction, but something curious.
Yeah.
It's not one of the texts says the world is not eternal, right? But in some other sutta, the Buddha says there is no beginning and there's no end. So that seems to me that the world or our rebirth is neither beginning or was he referring to samsara? So that point was contradiction.
Very, very good question. Please keep nitpicking, because it's important to be able to ask these questions. So you're very welcome to do
That's
that.
Question number one.
Yeah. So the answer to that is, when the Buddha, when we talk about eternal, we mean like some principle that is always there. So eternal in this context means that there is one thing that is always the same, never changing. Unchanging is what it means, eternal here. So, and even though you're right that samsara, there's no first beginning, nor is there any conceivable end if you carry on with craving, it is still a changing thing. It's something which always is in motion, always changing, always moving to something else. But the wrong view is that there is something within that changing world which is always the same, always self-same, without change. That is what is wrong. That is the meaning of the world is eternal. So these are different things, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so when it says the world is eternal, it means to say that the world is stable is a wrong view. Right?
The fact that the world is stable, unchanging, always the self-same, is only the superficial external things that are changing, that is the problem. Yeah, that's the wrong view.
And that there is an essence in the world, that's also a wrong view. That's what you mean.
That's the same idea. The essence and the internal stability is the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's another question that I'm not nitpicking, but so the feelings, right? I think one lady was saying feelings it's not emotions, but Ajahn says it's more like how we respond to that, pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So can I take it to mean that this is like our reaction, like averse reaction, attraction, and neutral?
No. The aversion and the attraction, that is the result of feeling here. Feeling comes first. Feeling is just how you experience something here. Feeling is the most salient aspect of an experience, the most important aspect of any experience. So when you enjoy something, it's a good feeling. It's displeasure, is a bad feeling. It's just your immediate reaction to something, whether you like it or you don't. Then, based on that, you then have aversion or attraction. Yeah, so aversion attraction is secondary here. The feeling is more primary. The feeling is the primary driving force in life for everyone here. It's kind of maybe in many ways the most important of the 5 khandhas, and why so many people make a breakthrough to awakening simply by contemplating feeling here.
Okay, so feeling is like in the context of this text is like liking and disliking.
No, it's not disliking. It is that which gives rise to liking and disliking here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a sensational feeling?
Sensation, yeah. So if you have a drink, it's a nice drink here. First of all, you feel the feeling. Okay, nice. That is a positive feeling here. Then you get attraction. First of all, you have to, without feeling it, you cannot have attraction here. First of all, you have to know whether it's nice or not nice. Then comes the attraction here.
So it's more like sensory feeling.
It's a sensory feeling, yeah.
Okay. And just now there was some like happiness, sadness, envy. So those kind of things, what do we call them in Buddhism? Like the range of emotions?
Yeah, well, that is just, these are words that are used and very similar to the way they are found in the Pali, actually. So these are, where did they go? So here we are: rebirth, old age, death. This is what it means: sorrow, lamentation, pain, sadness, and distress. Well, these are just a shorthand for all the things we experience as human beings. Yeah? When people die, how do you feel when someone close to you die? You feel, I don't know how you feel, but many people feel sad. Many people lament, many people cry, many people can't let go at all. They suffer for years afterwards. Many people die after they, like an old couple, one of them dies, the other one dies soon afterwards. Why is that? It's basically because of heartbreak, because they can't deal with it. This is kind of the human realm. And so this is what human life is like. This is what this really refers to. It just refers to all the pain, various kinds of pain we have in human existence. Yeah. Okay, one more question.
I'm just wondering, as a person who is a Christian and understanding about heaven and eternal, and can also see nihilism. So it's a personal question. So although now I'm Buddhist, I only think about my next rebirth. So I don't think about nibbana. Because that extinguishment to me is a bit close to nihilism. So it's a bit strange. I'm still grasping the concepts. So is that what I need to then change, not just think about, I hope my next rebirth is good, that I'll get to see Buddhism again, and so on? Or do I need to have, not just understand the Four Noble Truths and the 3 characteristics, but also wish for myself Nibbana, which is unusual in my mind. It's not something I do normally.
Yeah. Don't wish Nibbana for yourself, because that becomes like fake almost. You cannot wish something you don't understand. So what you should do instead is try to understand what Nibbana is. You should try to understand why existence is problematic. You should reflect on the nature of things, and then as you do that, then you will start to grasp why Nibbana actually is a positive thing. But it's hard to. So don't try too hard, and don't try to sort of. The main point of teaching these kind of things, the main point of teaching things like the downside of samsaric existence, is to kind of lean you in the right direction. So gradually you kind of get to appreciation of these things. But don't try too hard. Just allow these things to come naturally. They will grow with the understanding of what this whole area is about. So just try to kind of understand what the message of the Buddha is, but don't try to kind of have a false desire or a false wish for something that you cannot really fully understand.
So you said it was hard to understand. So for a layperson, so it's just coming to class and hearing the Dhamma, practicing a little bit, just gradually refining.
Yeah, and also it happens more naturally as you practice. If you're having success in your practice, you're getting a bit of nice meditation, you're having success in being more gentle person, all these kind of things. You find that many of these concepts and ideas, they actually become more easy to understand because you are also developing at the same time. So it's not just about intellectual understanding; it's about your personal development, your personal change as you go along. And it's also kind of also getting used to ideas as well. There's many things coming together there, I think, which gradually develops you in the right direction. Yeah. All right. Any more comments, questions, complaints? Yes, Nayana.
I have a question about the last section where it says about the 4 jhanas.
Yeah.
As I understand, it describes the 4 jhanas as exactly how Buddha taught.
Yeah.
And so why is it becomes a wrong view when it's actually in suttas the 4 jhanas are sort of equal to the samadhi?
Yeah.
So
it is wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I understand that it's not the 4 jhanas is not the not nibbana.
Yeah.
But does it say that those people who held that view that the 4 jhanas are the nibbana, but at least they were having some sort of a samadhi in
yes, I mean, the problem there is not the jhana. The problem is the view, the underlying view. That's the problem, because that view means that you misunderstand the jhanas. Yeah, so you take them to be nibbana, you take them to be the final, the highest kind of possible nibbana, and you have some kind of view about them being eternal or whatever. That is the problem. The jhana is okay, the view is the problem. That's why these things are called miccha samadhi. It's actually wrong samadhi, because the view is wrong. So that is the issue here. Did they have right view to some extent? Well, yes, because right view is also gradual. So they have some degree of right view. They have abandoned already all the sensory pleasures. They understand that sensory pleasures are hollow and empty. That is right view to that extent. Yeah, they have abandoned maybe the will and many things that we normally see as what we attach to in ordinary life. They have given up. So they have a degree of right view. But right view is like strange because, yes, you build up right view. You build it up and build it up and build it up. But then there comes a point when you make a complete flip. So you're kind of going the right direction, but then there is a point where there is like a complete turn, where you turn over completely. So it's gradual and sudden. We often talk about whether enlightenment is gradual or sudden. It's one of those discussions within Buddhist circles. Is enlightenment gradual? And it's both gradual and sudden. It is gradual and gradual and gradual until you reach a point where your mind is ready, then it's sudden. And they haven't come to that sudden point. They have only done the gradual part. And they have done the gradual part all the way to the 4th jhana. They're basically ready for awakening. All they need to hear is the word of the Buddha. If they hear the word of the Buddha, the sudden right view is going to come like that and flip the switch, and everything's going to be turned upside down. So what you're saying is true. They have a high degree of right view, but they're lacking that last part, which has to do with the sense of I am.
So you mentioned that it's miccha samadhi that they had.
Yeah.
But it was actually the way the jhanas were described. It looks like it is samadhi.
It is samadhi.
Yeah.
It is miccha, not because of the samadhi. It's miccha because the underlying view, which is behind it. So when you come, while you have the samadhi, it's samma samadhi. When you're in the samadhi, it's perfectly right. When you come out afterwards, you think, yeah, that's me. Yeah, wow, I had the jhana, yay me, I'm the best, whatever it is that you think. Actually probably won't think anything that coarse because you're such a refined state, but you take it to be you, yeah, and that is the problem. This is what this is called the underlying tendencies are called what are they called again? They are in Pali. So anusaya. That's the asmiman anusaya is called. Asmiman anusaya. Asmi, I am. Mana, conceit. Anusaya, the underlying tendency to the thought I am. So that underlying tendency is there when you are in the jhana. So when you come out afterwards, that underlying tendency arises again, and then you take it to be you. That is the problem. But if you have right view, you won't do that. That's the difference. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Any last? This is the last chance to ask questions about the Brahmajala Sutta. We probably will never do this again in my entire lifetime. So this is this 8 sessions is enough on the Brahmajala Sutta. Yes, please, Chaitasi. So, yeah.
You mentioned about the stream winner.
Mm.
Stream winner doesn't have Sakkaya Ditthi, but is it still he has some sort of Ditthi or something like that?
It has Samadhi, yeah.
Samadhi.
Yeah, no Miccha Ditthi.
Yeah.
So they have a Ditthi. Just like the Buddha also has Ditthi. The Buddha has views. Otherwise, he couldn't teach. He teaches from his views about reality. But Srimanta still has the sense I am, but it's not a view. It's more like a feeling, because it takes a while for that feeling to kind of work itself out of the mind. So this is the difference between asmimana, the conceit I am, and Sakkaya Ditthi. Sakkaya Ditthi is if you ask a stream mentor, is there self? They say, no, of course there is no self. It's all empty. But they may still feel that sometimes because of the habit of the mind, the habit of perception, etc. And this is what you find in the Khemaka Sutta, in the Kanda Samyutta, number 89, I think it is, something like that. And that's where the distinction is made. Yeah.
So that is just a habit.
Just a habit of the mind. Yeah.
It goes away once he's practicing more and more.
Yes, there is a nice simile in that sutta, the Khemaka Sutta. The simile is of if you have some clothes that you have recently washed. In those days, they washed the clothes in cow dung. That was kind of the standard way, because cow dung has certain antiseptic properties. So you wash it in cow dung, which is kind of strange from a modern point of view. But and then, of course, it has a bit of smell afterwards, right? Because of the cow dung smell. So then then the Buddha says, well, what do? It has been washed already, but it has the cow dung smell. You take that cloth, you put it in a box, in a casket, which has scent inside. You leave it in there, and after a while, that cow dung smell will go out, and we'll just have the beautiful scent of the scent in the thing. Yeah. So the cow dung smell is like the asmimana, the I am. Everything that has to do with I am is always bad. It's cow dung, it's excrement, and these kind of things. It's kind of the way it is. But eventually that smell disappears, and then it's gone. Yeah. Anything else, everyone? Everyone okay? Good. Isn't anything from online? The online master? Nothing online. Okay, good. So that's great. So that means we can pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and we can call it a day.